Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yon, and this episode is on diversity of cultures. And we just start off with a little bit that we're talking about to do with not goal setting. I don't really see myself as a goal setter,
Yes. Well, I'm not a goal setter either, mate. What I am is a motivator. If
including
I think of
yourself.
something, yeah. If I think of something, mainly myself, yeah, mainly, yeah. That's what I actually meant. Um, if I if I get something in my mind and I see the possibilities, I am then motivated to push myself to create it or attempt to create it with passion. That's what I do. And I said to myself only how many days ago? One, two, three. Yeah, I think it was either 4 or 5 days ago that I would really like to be a guest speaker with the book club that this lady runs from Cairns, which is on a Zoom thing. And I haven't been on that for about probably 18 months. I get an email, not yesterday, the day before, but I didn't see it till yesterday. And she says, "Hi, Roman. I was just wondering, I know this may be the last moment that I'm asking you, but would you be interested in actually being guest speaker for the book club on sometime in March, beginning of March, I think it is?" And I looked at that and I said, "Oh, all right." I wrote back and I said, "Yes, I would. I accept your invite. Thank you." And she wrote back to me and she said, "All right." She said, "That's absolutely brilliant." She said, "Because there are quite a few of the people that know you that have visited your website that are completely intrigued by the way you create your books. Your style is so different from most book writers, especially novel writers. And they would just love to be able to listen and ask questions of me again." So she immediately sent me an email saying, "Would you do this?" And I said, "Yes." So she wrote back and she said, "I will be in touch shortly to give you some links and things like that for the Zoom and all that type of stuff."
Brilliant.
Yeah. So it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing, Michael, when you think of something with passion, and I mean passion, something seems to set off a trigger when it comes to the energy line of connection. It's like your passion, which is energy, is being transmitted to other people that have you on thought, and then something is created from that.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, for sure.
You get
Oh
me?
yeah, it's things aligning. It's and it was spontaneous of you to have that. It wasn't a goal. It was like I would like to do that, and then
Mm,
yeah, you aligned with that. You thought passionately, and then it lined up. Yeah,
yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah. That's what I wanted to sort of mention today, if you don't mind. I wanted to mention about um, diversity of cultures. The reason I'm using that terminology is because I was speaking to, it's a small group of people that invited me over to talk about how to change one's thinking when it comes to diversity through cultures. So I went along and I spent probably an hour and a half, close to 2 hours with them. And they didn't do hardly any talking because they were so impressed with what I was saying about it. And some of it sounded really negative, yet but they agreed. And what it was, it's like if you take say Toowoomba for instance, go back 20 years, 15, 20 years. Toowoomba was a very, very different place. A lot more balanced when it comes to people, very religious, a few different types of religions, but mainly Christianity, which is fine for the people to believe in. That's their natural, I suppose, individuality. And I came up here quite a lot. and I had, say, 4 retail stores that I used to represent for Sony Australia and also National Panasonic at some time. But now, here we are, my wife and my son living in Toowoomba for now just over 2.5 years. And the energy change in this community on this hill is just incredible. Cultures are not getting on with each other. Violence, theft of cars has increased, I reckon, at least 25%. Just, I suppose, the anger that it represents. But nobody is seeing the reason why. Well, what it is cultures. Culture does not want to mix with another culture because there is so much anger inside maybe one of them or 2 of them or even 3 of them. So they just keep away from each other. In Sydney, for instance, there is so much violence going on to do with different cultures, whether it's the Israelis or the Pakistanis. They just arrested a woman, which was a head nurse in some hospital in Sydney, who has been threatening to kill these people who are the opposite country to her. So you've got to ask yourself the reason why. There's only one answer, and it's called karma. It's always back to karma, as we spoke about it before. And what it is past lifetimes, then genetically transferred through parents who hate another country or another culture. And that gets passed on to their children. Then it gets instilled into that child through the parents while they're young. And then they grow up with hate, with anger, violence. So this woman was threatening to kill these people in this hospital. So she was found out, and they did an investigation secretly, and they discovered the evidence, and she was arrested. She's charged with so many different charges. There are cultures in Australia that are bringing their violence into our country. If we go back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we never had that. It was so minor. It just wasn't there. And cultures never really clashed. People just got on. Doesn't matter what nationality you were from. But now that we're allowing certain types of culture in that have so much violence in their history, it's causing them to become violent against others, which goes back to karma. It's like the trail of energy from the karma that was the past is following those cultures, those people, wherever they go, because they're not dealing with it. And this is the problem. Now, I know for a fact that there's not many cultures in Australia now, in this moment, that communicate with each other, that get together at gatherings. And that's really sad. They don't want to get to know you. Some of them think they're so much better than you. And all because they won't look at their own anger, their own violence that is within them. So they take it wherever they go, whatever country they come to. And this is what I was explaining to these people. And you know, they sat there, and most of the men had their left hand up on their chin, and they will have their head slightly turned and really thinking. And one of them put his hand up, the same hand that he was holding his chin. He put it up and he said, "May I just interrupt you and ask a question?" And I said, "Yes, please do." How do we then change people's thinking so cultures get together like they used to so many years ago? I said the only way would be to open up schools where people can learn how to let go of their hate, how to deal with their karma. Because some of these people may have killed each other, raped each other's daughters, raped each other's mothers, wives, because that seems to be the big thing that's going around the world today. I mean, the UN is copying it again, United Nations. And this has been going on for 60 years, where they're accused of all these rapes again. I mean, seriously, here we are with, and I know I spoke about this, but here we are with an organization like the United Nations that's supposed to be working for all of humanity. And yet wherever they go and they got the opportunity, they rape hundreds of women, including children, and get away with it. So how do we then break down culture's anger towards each other? It's a really good question, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, teaching karma. Karma brings awareness, you said. Karma brings awareness.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
That's the only way we will ever get on with other people. Like in Australia, Australians speak to Australians. Africans speak to Africans. Muslims speak to Muslims. Indians speak to Indians. Israel speak to Israel. Hindus speak to Hindus. But no one wants to deal with all that mass conditioning that's become their most strongest belief system. And that's what causes all the violence on earth. Now, you've got to ask yourself this question. Why? Well, we step beyond what we've just spoken, because that's at a particular level of energy that created all this conditioning. But where does all of this come from to instill the violence and reinforce it around the world whenever they want to? And it comes back to the elite criminals, because it's part of their plan to constantly keep the violence going, which then retards people's thinking, and also it stops people from seeing the truth to what actually is going on in the world. The elite criminals, which I call them the CPCs, cannibalistic pedophile criminals, they are the ones who are causing all the violence on this earth. Now, that's a pretty big statement, yet it's 100% true, because that's the only way you bring down a species like humanity and control them. And they then pretend that they've got the answer for you. But they haven't, because their mission is to depopulate 90% of the human population. Interesting.
Yeah, you're saying they are the cause. So how are they being the ones that cause all of this violence?
They're paying people to create lies all around the world. Every time that there is a meeting or a rally, they put people within that rally, if they wish to suddenly go berserk and then disappear. And what they've done, they've instilled the violence in the rally. The police step in, and what there is mass confusion. That's how you learn to control a crowd. And people then get to a stage where they don't want to go to rallies because of the violence. And there's been a lot of rallies that have actually caused that type of violence. Yes, there's been a lot of peaceful ones, but those peaceful ones, they don't care about. There are certain ones that they want to. And Melbourne was the most typical example, when they had the Chinese military dressed in police uniforms and went in there suddenly and started bashing the people who were rallying peacefully, and caused so much confusion, so much anger. But no one really knew what happened. It was horrible, mate, a few years ago. And same with that one in Canberra. They did exactly the same thing. They caused mass confusion. They sprayed people in the mass park that they were sleeping in. There were over 800,000 people that went down to Canberra, all the people from Canberra. And we know people in Queensland that went down there, and they came back and they had been suffering health problems ever since, with radiation from utilities that got microwaves specially designed for warfare on top of their roof. And they had them going directly within the people. They had sonic sound machines that they use in wartime that were literally bursting eardrums in children and adults. And there were people bashing them. There was so much of it going on. And that rally just totally, eventually dissipated. And nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody. In fact, so many people believe that that rally never existed. And yet we have people that we know that said, hang on, I was there. I was right amongst it. I ran for my life. Hey, truth against lies. And governments, I don't care who they are, every government on earth is a liar. Every one of them. Because they're controlled by the UN and the World Health Organization. And they do exactly what they say. And what I said the other day, the one now, like Donald Trump, he's no longer associated with them. He's drawn away his funding and all this other stuff that goes with it. And just recently, they've now arrested the very man that could become the new president in Romania. They've now arrested him, and he's being interrogated. And even Stop World Control just said, hey, they've now arrested him because they don't want him. The elite criminals don't want him going up against the president that's there at the moment. They want the president that's there at the moment to stay in power because he does exactly what they ask. And they know if this new guy gets in as president of Romania, they've lost a big foothold because they're building apparently massive military bases in Romania, which I think is going to be against Russia.
Wow.
So it's all planned. It's all massive planning. Yeah.
And it's all controlled by the CPCs, all of it.
Yeah. All of it, mate. A whole lot. A whole lot. So when I explained a lot of that stuff, even what I just said now, to these people, there was two women that cried because they know, they can feel it in their own heart. We as humanity have to come back to one of the most basic levels of understanding in finding our own heart and to change human history. And if we want to change human history, we have to find our heart, not our egos.
And make that a part of the culture.
Absolutely. It used to be. People came from the heart. I remember. People came from the heart. Always.
So is the future, does that involve us turning into basically one culture, all of them iron out and become one?
There is nothing wrong with having all different cultures. What the biggest problem is, it's what's instilled into all those individuals of every single culture. And most of it now, because of all the wars and everything's coming up, it's all raising out of people, all the violence, all the anger. So they've lost the feeling of the heart, and now they become violent. And the ones that aren't violent are copying the violence. And that's the stupidity of it. We're not thinking rationally. We're thinking with our stupid egos of conditioning from the past.
Those that aren't violent, that have violence happen to them, they get pulled into the circle of it as well, don't they?
Yes.
And they're a part of it as well then. They're violent in the future.
When we raise our heart, the heart vibration, we raise our consciousness. And that is the only way to resolve the past. Because you cannot resolve the past at the same level of energy that created it in the first place. Interesting factor, Albert Einstein, he made that statement. That's his statement. And that's a very true fact. So we have to raise our consciousness to see a better way of resolving the issues that have been created or what we created.
And it comes with understanding of what's going on, including karma.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I said to these people, I said, karma basically is everything. It's the cause of everything, whether it's positive or negative. And in most situations, it's got to be at least 65% negative and 35% positive. And it's getting less and less when it comes to being positive because of the violence, because of the hate that these so-called elite criminals, they are literally backwards. They are retarded in their thinking. They don't care about life. I mean, you ask yourself this question. How could anyone in that type of understanding, like Klaus Schwab's, actually rape babies, eat babies, sacrifice babies through Satanism? How could anyone do such one of the most horrendous negative acts that any society could see? A normal thinking person, even a basic normal thinking person, has more heart than someone like him would ever have. He has so much anger, so much hate within him that he will die with that hate, and he will come back and be exactly the same and try to do more damage. He'll just follow like a rabbit would follow. Anyone that's above him, he will just listen to and go with it because he's negative in every way. He's a narcissist and a psychopath, just like Bill Gates, just like all the elite families that have caused all the pain and misery on this earth. And when we wake up and see that by finding our heart and raising our vibration, we will know then what must be done 100%. And we will eliminate the evil. Until that moment, everything will get worse because we are not trying to raise our vibration to see the truth because we're caught up in a delusion.
Right. Yeah. So good. So positive.
Yeah, but it is positive.
Well, raising our vibration and moving forward and being, that is possible.
Mate, I said to these, actually, this one man, I said, I trust I didn't offend you. He looked at me and he put his hand on my shoulder and said, no, you didn't offend me. You actually woke me up. I've never had anyone talk to me like that because I've never known anything beyond what I am. He said, I know I'm using your words, but he said, you woke me up. And that's the whole point, to wake up those that cannot see beyond their hate, their fear. That's what the point is, to go beyond that vibration.
Do you think these people would want to do this, to go beyond?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think actually, if we organised a mass seminar, right, for say 4 hours, whatever, and we had the advertising, we had the marketing, of course we had the money to do it. If we found the right type of people, or we just suddenly had all this money, that's the first thing I would do is literally create seminars and speak just what I'm saying now about the truth to wake people up. And the ones that would get up and say, oh, what a load of rubbish, I'm getting out of here, that's fine. They're either a part of the ugliness or they're a part of their own ignorance. But at least their buttons have been pressed. And that's the most important factor.
Mm.
Gives them the opportunity to go beyond what they are.
I mean, other people will come to understand that it's all karma, all of their life is
Yeah.
karma, and they will choose to find these higher vibrations.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
That's very true. I had this interesting guy come along today. He's a quoter. He was assigned to come along from the real estate to actually quote on a new bathroom or the fixing up of this bathroom, which is the main bathroom in this house that we exist in. And I just let him be while I went and did some more editing. And about 10 minutes later, he yells out and says, "Roman," he said, "I'm finished. I'm going." And I said, "Oh, all right, I'm coming." And I went down, and he actually shook my hand, and we started talking as he went out the door, and he was asking a couple of questions, and I asked him a couple of questions, and something came up about vaccinations. And he said, "I'm anti-vax." I said, "Really?" I said, "Really, Mick?" He goes, "Yeah, I am." He said, "I would never, ever have a vax." He said, "I know they're bad. I don't know why they're bad, but I know they're bad." I said, "Do you want to know why they're bad?" He said, "Enlighten me." And I explained to him, and he goes, "Holy hell, eh?" He said, "That's in every one." I said, "Yeah." And then he told me about, I'm not sure who the person is, but someone in the family, an elderly person who's 73, I think he said 73, um, she apparently went and got the booster. And within 2.5 months, I think he said, she can't walk anymore. She's a cripple.
Wow.
All her legs are now totally numb. And that's what has grown within. Because her body wasn't healthy, it just went crazy with the booster and literally blocked all her veins in her legs, and she can't walk. So, and I said, I was telling him about some people down in Sydney. I know some coroners, especially one, and they explained to me what this white stuff is within their veins, their main arteries in their legs. And they said, like, there's some of them got about a metre and a half totally blocked, no blood whatsoever. And they end up having cardiac arrest, right? And they end up dying. And then they're autopsied on, and they find out this. But they're told by the government not to say a word. Now, you tell me what government would say that when they know that that could actually save people from getting more injections. So the governments then are the conspirators against the people, 100%. What other answer could you come up with? Yeah. So, yeah.
It's a sad story for his person.
Yeah, it is, mate. But what he said to me, because when he said that she's 73, I said, "Oh, well, I'm 74." His jaw dropped. I mean, look, it doesn't really matter, but he said, "My God." And he was really, like, serious. He said, "My God, you're 74?" He said, "Look at you." He said, "Oh, Jesus, you're standing tall." He said, "God, you look like a solid brick." He said, "My God." And I said, "Well, I don't believe in birthdays." And he asked me to explain that, so I did. I explained it. And I also explained that, I'm a full-on vegetarian, and I'm careful of what I eat because there's so many poisons in the foods and all that. And he said, "Oh, geez," he said, "I could really talk to you for hours." He said, "My wife would be the same." I said, "I'll give you my card." And I went and got my card and gave it to him, and he gave me his. And he said, "I'm going to look up your podcast." He said, "So that's your podcast?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I have an interviewer that named Michael Yon in South Australia, and he does all the editing and, asking questions and that type of thing, and we do them." He goes, "Holy hell. Wow." I said, "Be careful." I said, "It's very controversial." I said, "I believe in the truth and only the truth." He said, "So do I." He said, "So do I." He said, "I'm very careful who I open up to, that's for sure." But he said, "You," he said, "My God," he said, "Jesus."
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm starting to meet a few different people, like this other one here that picks up his daughter. He's going through a lot at the moment, I know, emotionally. But, yeah, I'm starting to meet people that want to know more, and that's important.
Yeah, and sounds like at least once a week someone's saying, "You're that age? No."
Yeah, yes,
Oh, that's
yes,
great. Mm.
yes.
Yeah, I said to the person that was here today, I said, "Oh yeah, Kuntarkis is putting everyone to shame because he'll go to exercise for like 2.5 hours almost every night, wakes up the next morning with no pain at all, and he's gone as hard as he could." And I said, "It's ridiculous, 74."
Yeah, yeah. That's why I never ever. I was saying to myself last night when I was on the vibrating platform doing my isometrics and that, and I was just saying to myself, Jesus, hell, I'm something's going on inside my body because I there are times when I'm really tired. Like the weekend was pretty rough because I worked pretty well all day Saturday, cutting trees and that type of thing, pulling weeds. And then on Sunday, I went out there and I mowed the yard and whippersnipped and cleaned everything down. Then I did weed pulling again. And then Sunday afternoon, I brought out my bottle of drink that I mix up. I have grapefruit juice, which is not concentrated, and water, and also kombucha. And I nearly drank the whole liter. And then JC said, "Oh," he said, "before I set up my trail," he said, "can we do some running?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So we ran from the garage all the way down the front. He's a good runner. And I must have done that, I don't know, 15 times. And I said, "Oh, I think I've had enough." And that was it. And then my wife, she did some running. The next day I woke up, I had real pains in my hips, mate, because I don't do running on concrete. That was the difference. And I wasn't used to that, right? But the funny thing is, the following day, I did 6.5 Ks on my treadmill, did some stretching with my platform. I woke up the next day, it was all gone.
Yeah.
See? And now I'm fine. Yeah, so it's a state of the mind where a lot of people, when they got pains in their legs because they've done things they haven't done before for a long time, they won't do anything until all that pain goes away. And what they don't realize is you've got to keep it up to disperse it. It's just energy blocks. That's all it is. And our body does have what is called energy blocks, and we need to unblock them through exercise, through the state of the mind, and it does work.
Right.
So, what would you like to talk about?
Well, what else? What else is that? What what I want to talk about? I think the thing that inspires me, and maybe even others that listen a fair bit as well, is any kind of your adventures, because they're higher. They're they're intuitive, psychic, whatever you want, out of body, whatever you want to call them. I think people love that stuff. I certainly do. Those adventures are great.
Mm. They are actually, mate. They are. There are some that I won't talk about because they are personal. But there's a lot that I have spoken about that I feel that could also help inspire others, because I believe there are a lot of people having a lot of different experiences, and I think a lot of people just put them off as a dream.
Mm.
And what people have to understand, yes, your emotions throughout the day can make you dream certain things because you are concentrated on those things. It's like a person I said to probably a week ago at the Woolworths. I said, "Look," I said, "I was talking to a lady and she said when she does all the, what is it called, packing, of items, and the food items, and she puts them through, that she actually dreams about it." And she was telling me all about how she has all these horrible dreams, really bad customers, and she's packing in all this garbage for them. It's all rotting food and all this type
Oh,
of stuff. Yeah, and I said, wow. I said, that's some negative stuff. I said, is that how you're really feeling about your job? And she looked at me for a moment and she said, oh, Jesus. Oh, there's no one here, is there, except you? She said, I got to answer this. Be truthful. She said, you're probably right. You just hit the nail. And I said, well, there you are. She said, oh my God. She said, I have been feeling good about my job lately. She said, maybe that's one of the reasons why. I said, yes, it could be. She said, I have to look at that. She said, yes. Oh, she said, I have to look at that. I said, yes. So, yeah. And I said to this other lady, and she said, oh, I do have some dreams sometimes. And she said, sometimes it never stops. It's like I'm just serving one customer, and the trail of their food is so long, I don't know where to put it all. It's just crazy dreams, crazy. And I said, that's probably reality, because everything is energy, and energy is everything. So when you have a dream state experience, that's your emotions, and that's your spirit in spirit world creating your emotions, because you haven't thought beyond your emotions. And the only way to do that is to raise your consciousness, your own self-awareness. And she said, well, I'm Indian. She said, and I believe in the spirit and all that type of stuff. And she said, I believe in meditation. I said, well, maybe you need to meditate more. She said, yes. She said, my mother meditated a lot in India. But she said, I used to, but I don't do it anymore because I'm married with kids and all that type of stuff. But she said, maybe I need to get back into it to change my dreams. I said, yes. You change your thinking into being more positive, and you change your dreams into being more positive. I learned that through my own self experiences. She goes, oh, she said, I will try that. So everything can change, mate. Sometimes your dreams can be horrible. Sometimes your dreams can be delightful. Sometimes your dreams can be really fruitful, like in your experience. And sometimes, as you grow, you can literally be aware in how you're controlling your actual dreams, which are reality, because everything is energy.
Is it the spirit that is showing us, or is it the spirit that is suffering?
No, no. Oh, the spirit does suffer, yes, because it's limited, because the physical being is limited. The physical being is limited in its state of thinking, so the spirit is limited in their state of thinking, because they're at the same level of understanding. But sometimes the spirit wants to soar high, and it can change. And it can also cause a lot of confusion to the actual physical being. I've seen it, and I've had those experiences in the past, so I understand it. Our thoughts create everything. If we are negative in our thoughts, in our physical life, then we are negative from the spirit's perspective in the spirit world. And we have to change that. And it's very easy to change if we want to.
Right. It's very easy to change because we see,
Very easy to
because
change.
it's obvious what is showing in their dreams, and therefore we tackle that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Did I explain to you about the experience I had with the aliens in the same appearance as humans with different color, shiny suits on?
Oh, go on. No, go on.
Oh, I didn't tell you about that one.
No,
Oh,
no.
I only had this about 3 nights ago, and I was drawn out of my body really rapidly and through the wall quite rapidly. And I ended up in this space that had a lounge, or actually several lounges, and some single seats, and they were all white. And suddenly, as I entered, I saw these beings who looked physical, very well dressed, very well with their hair and everything else. And they walked in and they just sat down. Some had their legs crossed, some didn't. Some were dressed in bright, shiny blue suits. Some had pinstripes, grey, shiny suits, and some had black, and a couple had white, very shiny. And I was sitting on a high chair, and it turned. And all I had to do was think as it turned, and I would turn around facing each of the people in the circle. They were very friendly, they were very loving and very understanding. And they were asking me all these different questions about humanity. And I mean a lot of questions. Some were confusing, others weren't. But they were asking about the history of humanity. And apparently, what these aliens do who look human, they go around to different worlds that need attention, in their own growth, whether it's spiritually, whether it's physically or emotionally. And they make then a decision to actually enter that vibration and become human through the natural process of birth, where they can become a well-known figurehead to try and help in different areas of humanity's evolution. So all the questions were about the history of humanity, the wars of humanity, the different emotions with different families in different countries on the planet. They talked about cultures, and they asked about, do you believe cultures work? And I says, cultures can work if the human or humans are more balanced without their negative emotions that seem to rule their life. So I answered every question, and it went on. And there's a lot of questions that I can't remember because it was a constant thing. And every time one behind me asked, my chair would turn automatically or I could turn it. It was really interesting. And it was a really comfortable sort of high chair. And as I said, everything was white. The lounges were very differently shaped to what we would have here on Earth, but they looked very comfortable. It was very interesting. It wasn't a lengthy experience, but it probably felt like about 45 to 50 minutes in total. And the amount of questions were quite enormous. And they were really interested about human evolution from the past to the present and why there is so much carnage on this planet. And I did. I answered every single question.
Right. And so they go from planet to planet where they can help out. They end up incarnating.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Their civilization incarnates. And by the way, they are there because of one main reason, Unica.
Wow.
They know the Nipulans. The Nipulans spread certain types of news around universes for particular reasons. So it can involve other species to help other species grow in evolution. Because they know if they help a civilization grow in awareness and conscious awareness, then there is less violence, less wars throughout universes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
It was a
Yeah.
very interesting one, mate.
And so
Very
did they appear to you as human, or do you think?
100%.
Yeah.
And they look like their faces look like dolls,
Yeah.
like they were wearing like a mask that worked perfectly.
Mm.
They were so elegant in everything. Even the men, the way they spoke, you could tell they spoke from the essence of their being, their heart, when they
Wow.
asked questions. Yeah. They asked a lot of questions about me. They also told me a lot of things about me that Unica and Vimera had told them.
Wow.
They were quite astounded by the things that I can do and that I am doing within spirit world. They were also very intrigued that this simple human on this planet, right, that doesn't have a lot of wealth, yet he owns a planet that nobody else can get onto.
Yes. Yeah.
They were really intrigued by that. And they asked me to explain how that came about. So I explained about my previous life, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, when I actually found the planet and I decided to make it barren, where no life exists except the life that was vegetarian on that planet, so it cannot be corrupted. Because if I took, let me just say this, and I'm not being harsh, but let me just say I took, say, 1,000 humans, some families, some ones who are together, like male and female, and I took them to Shikani, and we developed housing and all that type of stuff. Within 100,000 years, the planet would probably be as corrupt as what Earth is.
Because they came from Earth.
That's right.
Ugh.
Yep. Sad to say, but that's exactly what would happen.
Wow.
It would just come out. And if amongst that 1,000 there was someone like Klaus Schwab, oh my God! Imagine him having family lines and creating, in 100,000 years, how many families? Oh my Jesus! It'd be unbelievable. So that's why I would never do it.
When you say you make it barren, you mean all the carnivoristic animals were eliminated?
Yes. They were eliminated by the creatures, by the way, not by me, by the creatures. And they all. How would I put it? Let me put it this way. Originally, when the creatures lived upon that planet, by Multama, who created them through genetic engineering, because he wanted to take revenge on 2 different planets. It backfired, and it nearly wiped out the people that he had with him on that planet, Shikani. The creatures multiplied by the hundreds of thousands. I've never actually given them a name. I've never really discovered a name that would actually fit what they're about. If you saw one, Michael, you would probably drop dead. Right? I'm serious, because they are the most hideous looking creatures that you could ever see. And when they open their mouth, they could bite half of you in half.
Wow.
From the waist, snap you in half, just one bite, without even twisting you like a shark, just snap you in half, the way their teeth are formed. So that would be horrendous. But those creatures basically nearly wiped out the creatures, the vegetarian creatures on that planet. They caused so much devastation. Then they started eating of themselves. Then, eventually, there was no more. So now, the creatures that were there have rejuvenated through the consciousness of the planet, because that's what a planet does. And what it's got now is perfect harmony, perfect balance. No carnivore creatures, all vegetarian. No insects, no snakes, no sharks, no tigers, no lions, nothing. Just vegetarian animals that don't survive of killing. And that's where consciousness evolves, when there's no killing. Because that was not meant to be. Aliens have interfered with this planet for millions and millions and millions of years, and have created devastation over that entire time when it comes to different formulations of creatures, like the dinosaurs were created for a reason, then destroyed for a reason. Most people would never understand that reason. I mentioned it the other day. It's all about when creatures populate to a point where there's too many, they decided to destroy it because it became unbalanced, and no one could come to the planet in safety because there were so many carnivores that were so vicious. That meteor basically destroyed 90-something% of the creatures that exist here. And over time, Other creatures were created through the planet, through consciousness. People don't realize that planets actually are alive. Earth especially, because Father created it.
Yeah, and you're saying flourish on peace, as in those that really
Absolutely.
grow consciously are among peace.
That's right. Yep.
I was having a discussion with this friend, and he's like, oh, I can understand not wanting to kill and eat an animal, but what about a fish? A fish isn't an animal. And I'm thinking, hang on a second. Why a fish any less? And why? Oh, yeah, but Jesus ate fish. Jesus, I'm thinking, no, but it doesn't. There's no need for us to kill in order to eat well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, Jesus didn't eat fish, by the way.
Oh, really?
No. His teachings were all about putting food into your body that helped you grow consciously and grow beyond what you are. You know, the funny thing is, if you took a person, say in the time of Jesus when he was put to death, murdered, and you took that person, or say several of them, and you put him now into this moment, a lot of the awareness back then was better than what it is today.
Oh, really?
You know the reason why?
Why?
Because they didn't eat. They didn't eat the really bad stuff that what we eat today.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Gosh,
That's the big difference, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. This concludes another episode of Kuntarkis. If you'd like to find out more about Kuntarkis, find his website, which is etcconsciousness.com. He has articles there, he has his books listed there, and also if you have any reason to contact us in general for any reason, just email kuntarkis@gmail.com. That's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Michael Yon, and stay tuned for more.